I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That was quite
Substantial.
That was substantial. All right.
I'll make a motion that we accept the consent agenda.
Need to turn your mic on.
Oh, it's on. I'll make a motion that we accept the consent agenda.
Then a second. Okay, no discussion. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great. So on to department reports. I'm going to start out. Since the mayor is out today, he asked me to play Mayor Pro Tem for him. And I want to start with something that's really important. So that is the Lions Club. I don't know if anybody knows what's going on, but the Lions Club, we were trying to get a $5,000 grant to trim the trees in the park, and that grant came in at 50%, and the Lions Club stepped up, gave us $2,500, and that is fantastic. We really appreciate it. Now, I think the city has been a little remiss in taking care of its volunteer organizations and individuals in the last in history, and this is an opportunity to change that. I know there's quite a number of Lions Club members here, and there's some volunteers here, and we really appreciate you all. There's not a whole lot that could get done in the city without the volunteers, so thank you very much. And with that, let's have some department reports. Public Works, Mike Fisher.
All right, how you guys doing? Good. So we have a bad situation over behind the shortstop, the Patch Street is just falling apart, which leads to the alley behind the mark, and you could lose a Volkswagen in that thing. So we're getting bids to fix the blacktop first so that we can go down. Oh yeah, Volkswagen, not even lying. So we can go down and redo the alley. So that's what we worked on. We have 2 bids in, one still to come. We did install the screw press. It's up and running now, the new one, working good, might be some blood hole. So that's all turning out good. And we had a site visit from Department of Ecology. They came down and looked through our facility and everything, and it worked out really good. They were very happy. I was their only thing that they were concerned about. So maybe we can work on that in the future. Other than that, I think all we did install a sink at the park. So we got that all done. So other than that, I think we're good.
Okay, Mike, could we ask you to submit it ahead of time so that we can review it?
Yeah, I was ill on
Also
Friday,
for
so I
the-
didn't get it in on Friday, but I'll try to get that done.
Okay, thanks.
You bet.
Thank you for the big screw press. How much money did you save the city?
Oh, it's probably a $65,000 machine, all said and done. We paid $100 for it.
That's fantastic.
Thank you.
And that was a $100 gift from Winlock and a bunch of you and John's time.
Yeah, we
Oh, that was
acquired
$100.
it from Winlock. They acquired it from up north somewhere. They decided not to use it, and as soon as I heard that, we went over and kicked the tire, decided we could probably retrofit it in where our little one was, and it all worked out.
Is it a quadruple? Is it a 10X?
Oh, at least,
Fantastic.
so. It's for the growth that's coming, it's gonna accommodate pretty well.
Thank you. Looks like I may, thank you. So it looks like I should have gone with city clerk first. Do you have a status to give? No? Okay. What kind of
I've
vision?
had questions over too.
Well. Maybe we could.
Don't
make
lie
them-
because.
Let's,
you'll hear it.
let's email them, email our questions and then she can get them back, later in the week.
Well, I saw that in the minutes that we approved that we were going to have a workshop and I've not heard anything
We
about
we have
that.
a workshop coming Thursday. Actually, I was gonna confirm that under other business.
Okay,
It's actually on my,
Yes,
it's on my copy of other business as well. Chief of Police,
Just a couple quick things. We've got a major case, 21 Henry 250. It's being reviewed by local city attorney. We anticipate forthcoming charges on that. They are also looking at our policy manual that I revised and rewritten to make sure it's within the laws, to make sure that we increase the livability for the city and or, do what's best for the city of Toledo and for our citizens. And the last thing, I'm really pleased to announce that the Washington State Criminal Justice Training Commission has issued us a certification of compliance of in-service training mandate. And that's by Monica Alexander, the executive director, that our department is up to level as far as training is concerned for last year. So that was a big step. And then working with Rachel and the rest of the staff on the access training, that's pretty much almost there too as well. So we made a lot of strides.
I'd heard she was in classes for it. So.
Yeah,
That's great.
I already took a couple courses myself, so there's a couple more things that we have to do and then we'll be in compliance.
How's the job hunt?
Busy. Very, very busy. But good.
Promising.
for a second officer, not for you, right?
Right. So we're still looking. We have a couple candidates that I've reached out to and had some conversations with. So it's a matter of them talking to their better halves and coming to an agreement. So we'll see if that happens or not. I'm doing everything I can.
Thank you.
Have you, I'm wondering if you, sorry about that. I was waiting for it to come
I
back.
guess I should stand.
I'm wondering if you, maybe could talk to the city clerk about, MRSC also, that's our insurance. So they cover legal on our insurance to make sure that they get a look at the policy manual and see that they
That's
like
right.
it as well. That's who that's going through.
Yes.
Okay.
It's all going, yeah, it's all gonna be going there.
Great.
I want to get the initial draft back from the legal, the attorneys, and then I'll send it to the insurance to have them finish it off.
Fantastic. To council reports, Emily.
Fishing derby through the Lions Club was a success. It was small, I think, this year because of the last year it was not attended due to the park being closed, not the Lions Club fault. But anyway, it was small attendance, but a smashing success. And it was overall fun. My daughter caught a fish and we fried it up and ate it for lunch. So,
And that's one of the many things that
Yeah.
raise money so they can help us.
donated our money to Lions Club and not at all.
Shelley. It's gonna go in order.
I have nothing.
Okay, Kathy?
I did attend the last planning commission meeting for some extra study and understanding. And it was really beneficial. I was so glad I had done it.
And if any of you have missed those, they are available on YouTube.
Mhm.
You have more?
Nope.
Okay,
That was enough.
Jamie,
I got my lawn mowed.
we appreciate that.
Also, I'll take this moment to remind everybody that 18 inches is the height that your lawn is supposed to be at. So
The map.
so if it's over 18 inches.
Yours wasn't even there.
No, no,
Had room to grow.
no, there are some fields in town, but I don't even know which
Emily's
ones
got
they
a tape
are.
measure, so.
No, I don't, but I did grow up on a farm, so.
You know,
So you wanted to go out and, okay.
So I just wanted to hay them. Oh.
So I will let our So on my status, I went to Chehalis with Steve Birch, there you are, to the, what was it, the county planning commission meeting, where they were talking about our growth plans and such, and it turned out it was good we were there. Toledo was one of the few represented, so that's a good thing. I'll let Steve talk about that more. And on to committee reports. So I think we'll go take Todd last, because he's got a lot of stuff. I'm assuming you gave us everything on the, you have more to report on? No, yeah?
Well, the committee report, is that gonna be the major piece that I wanted to talk about?
We don't really have a police committee. You've just been having 2 reasons to stand up every time.
So really, quickly, does anybody know what the Blake decision is?
No, we have that on the agenda.
Okay, so you don't want me to talk about it?
No.
Okay.
We'll get, you, I do, just not now.
No,
So, fine then, planning commission.
As Eric said, we both attended the Lewis County Growth Committee meeting, and it was for a public hearing to go over the information that we had submitted on our own population growth and the growth of the other cities within the county, as well as the unincorporated areas. Toledo and Chehalis were the only cities represented there. And there was not a lot of discussion, but there were some questions that we were able to answer for them. And they passed with a unanimous vote to send it on to the Board of Commissioners for approval in the numbers that we had suggested.
Excellent.
Good news.
Thank you. Steve, Todd, you ready?
Yes, sir. So adding to Chair Birch's Planning Commission staff report. I'd like to make a request of council to consider setting a hearing date. On May 19th of last year, the Planning Commission recommended that we change our lot size for duplex development and look at and consider other changes to the city minimum lot sizes. And they were asking that that be changed from the 4,000 square feet, which it is today in code, to 6,000 square feet. Unfortunately, that recommendation never made it before council. So I'd like to bring you all that recommendation just as an agenda, potential future agenda item in later meetings, and maybe take any input that you might like to have on that. Whatever you'd like to give me. I think at this point, I just need some sort of direction from council about should we set this on a future agenda, actually have a meeting and discuss it and consider that recommendation. Would you like the planning commission to look at it again since it has been so long, or are you just really not that interested in picking up that recommendation at this point? So that's kind of the three options I see. Of course, we're just looking for input, so whatever options you want to give us.
I'll add a 4th item to other business so that we can talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the other piece of that, as Chair Birch had indicated, we've been attending the preliminary meetings. They also attended the planning commission meeting on that, but the county is having preliminary meetings ahead of their growth planning update. There's a countywide GMA planning process that will update the county's comprehensive plan, and that begins in July of this year, and it runs through July of 2025. That's a countywide process. So as a result of that, all of the cities also have to consider updating their comprehensive plans. Well, there's grant funding available for that. But we do need just some direction from council. I don't think we need a firm motion or anything like that. Just something. There's a $100,000 grant for cities under 3,000 in size to cover the costs of hiring consultants and doing other things through that 2-year period. While they're considering it, I know your planning commission chair and Eric have already put in a substantial amount of effort attending those meetings and participating in them so far, but there are 2 years worth of meetings. And then if you are going to consider changes locally, you have to consider the changes that are state mandated, but you're also able to open up your comprehensive plan and look at it and consider other changes with that grant money. So just kind of looking for some direction from council as to whether or not the city would like to apply for that grant. The amount isn't guaranteed, but it's guaranteed that you'll get at least some to offset the cost, and all you have to do really is ask. There's a grant application, and then we'll work with Commerce to try and finalize the amounts and how that can be spent in the reporting requirements.
If I can stay on context, Steve, you had something to add to
Yeah,
that?
it's with regards to that item. As Eric knows, when he was on the planning commission and I were working together, that we spent a great amount of time. Untold hours working on our growth management plan that we adopted in 2020. Which foresaw none of the COVID. Reactions that we've seen with the growth, et cetera, so. I can only tell you that we had volunteers working for the city that put in a ton of hours. Making sure that was hyped up, organized, and submitted back to planning commission for their consideration. And a lot of hours were gone into the facilitation of the manufacture of the report. We essentially are gonna have to do that all over again because we're apples and oranges with where we were then.
Yeah.
Which is where we are going to be, and any monies that we could get from the county to assist in that process would be greatly appreciated.
And I don't believe, Cindy, you want to write it again already? No.
You
No,
don't wanna write it
that's
again?
a no. She was the secretary and the author of most of the work. I think council likes going and getting money to help us do things we have to do.
Okay, we'll proceed with applying for that and keep you posted on the progress.
Yeah.
The other item I had is we received a contact from an individual who's looking at doing a development on Fifth Street. He's kicking around some ideas on how to use that property. It's between Fifth and Sixth, and I think south of Maple. It's kind of the block that we're talking about there. And one of the things that is a burden is they'd like to do some multifamily housing, and in order to do that, you have to hit at least 22,000 in the code, which we believe he may be able to do if the city would consider vacating the right of way behind. So he's had some preliminary calls with me as the city planner. We've had some discussions, and it's a discretionary act of council that would have to come back before you as a formal agenda item. But he's looking for some pretty immediate feedback on whether or not that's likely, or whether or not that even would be considered. And I was just, I know that we've looked at vacating other street right of ways in the past where it helps development. I just wasn't sure if I wasn't sure council's position on that. So I just wanted to bring that up and get some input on it. So I could give him, not an approval, but just maybe some better idea of what council may be looking for with the vacation that right away.
Well, there's a process, yes, fill out the
Absolutely.
paperwork and map and that type of stuff so that we can review it and see if it's acceptable.
Yeah,
You looking for where it is?
yeah, I'm looking for where it is.
It's the lots commonly known as the vacant property, if that helps.
It's they own it's the entire city block down there right by the where the park in the middle and the grade school come together. Or right where they kind of meet.
Okay.
There's a giant hedge that goes all the way around it.
Oh, yeah.
So it's basically 3 vacant lots and a house. So do we need a motion on that?
No motion at this point. I was just looking for a discussion as to whether or not we should even encourage him to apply, or there is
I
a
need to look and
process.
see
and
at the
he'll
right of way
follow that.
first.
But
He should go ahead and then.
Yeah,
start the
I think he
process.
should do that. Yeah.
okay, yeah, I kind of, he needs to make some more immediate decisions based on the real estate transactions, and I
Yeah.
told him we weren't gonna be able to get council approval of a street vacation.
Fifth
because we
and
have
Maple,
noticing
you
other-
What is it?
So I'll go ahead and
It's
encourage
like
him.
right
to
where the
apply
Angela Bacon's
process.
house. Is that it?
Is it? Yeah, that's it.
Is that Angela Bacon's house? Okay.
Yeah.
That's the right away.
Yeah,
Okay,
because
yeah.
it also
So it's-
depends
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
On what's there, what's gonna be
Tuesday,
there,
Angela Bacon's
whether or not
house.
we can vacate it.
Have you had a chance to talk with Mike about that or?
I
Or
haven't really
Public Works?
taken it too far. I haven't talked to Public Works or anything. I don't know council's tenor for vacating right of ways. I don't know if you prefer to keep them for future use of the city if you should ever need them, or if your city has a lot of alleyways that are currently undeveloped even.
I think historically we've chosen to,
Keep them.
to keep them unless there's a good reason, and then this seems like a good reason if it enables.
Okay, but you'd probably want to see what was proposed there as part of the
Yeah.
application as well.
It's a case
The
by
application
case.
materials aren't really too cumbersome, so, but I can ask him to provide some additional information that might help you in the review. And that's kind of what I was fishing for too.
Yeah, Rachel can give you the paperwork.
Thank you.
He's calling it a, sorry, I thought I heard you say you're calling it a street, so is it a street?
No,
or alley?
an
It's a
alley.
right of way, but it's an alley. It's a
Okay.
narrow.
it's lawn with hedges between it for the last 5 decades. So I don't think there's anything there.
No.
Yeah.
I
It's
understand
in the
what he's
city.
talking about, I just.
He also
I
used to
heard-
have horse racing in the park, so, you know.
That would be fun. We should do.
No, we shouldn't. There's an ordinance. Jeez.
So the last item that I had was a kind of a budget request. There are a number of things that are coming up that aren't included in the scope and budget that I had developed. These are things like the planning grant application and doing some of that work. Some of the participation that I've been sharing with Chair Birch and Mayor Pro Tem Hayes. So those two, so there's what I'd like to do is try to put together an additional services agreement, and one of those things is the interlocal agreement. The interlocal agreement that we've talked about at the council meeting a month ago now, with the other jurisdictions. I do have in my scope currently the assistance with developing a procedure for building permitting, but not actually for that piece of it. And I don't really have a lot of experience with interlocal, so I'd like to bring on some additional help for that too. But in order to do that, I need to bring back a scope and budget for your all approval.
So this is the interlocals for permitting inspections and reviews such.
Yes, the building permit reviews and inspections, and then also developing the RFP, those things. That's a little bit outside my wheelhouse. I've been around those when they've been done, but I've never done one myself, but Adam, who's sitting next to me, has been through that process for the city before, for the city of Willamette, and can help and guide us through that. But in order to bring other consultants on, through my contract, I need to be able to have the budget to do that, so. I'd like to bring back something, but I wanted to make sure that was okay too, because it's a change in the scope that we've discussed before and what's already been approved by council.
Yeah.
So, I'm not asking for your approval tonight to get it done. I'm just asking for your direction on how you'd like to proceed with that. And then the other one that I had, participation, the planning grant participation in GMA planning processes, and then the local agreements are the three things that I've currently identified that aren't really in my scope. I've been doing some of those just because they need to be done and it's timely, but we're getting to the point now where I probably need to bring back a budget of them.
And just to make sure everybody realizes he's doing way more work than we paid for and has been.
Yeah.
And so at a certain point, I appreciate you being straight with us that
Was that okay if
you
I
do hit a wall. Yeah, please bring something back.
bring back that to a future agenda? And that was all I had for the planning commission report.
Great. I don't think there's any other committee reports. Do we want to discuss about the annexation before we do the hearing? Does that give you a chance to talk about what it is so people know what it is in the hearing, or?
So,
What do you
Mr. Mayor, I think we'd like to open with the staff report and presentation.
Okay,
And then oftentimes there's an opportunity for the applicant to offer any presentation that they'd like to, and then we open up to the public for testimony. And then following that, you can close it, you can give the applicant a chance to respond to any information. And then you can close it and deliberate, ask questions of staff once the public record is closed.
okay.
And then after following that, you can make a motion to any of the action items that were identified in the staff report.
And so that presentation is you. I'm gonna let you,
It's me.
I'm gonna let you have us do it correctly, so
So
take over.
So for the annexation, and maybe for this one, I'll stand so I can see the board too.
So we have it on the big screen that shows the area.
So the annexation area that's shown on the map there was approved by council to move forward with the 10% annexation. Since that approval has happened, there's been a couple of changes to it that I've addressed in the staff report that hopefully you all will receive a copy of. I wasn't going to go through the staff report word for word or in detail, but just summarizing the request tonight. The annexation area up on Toledo Vader Road has a small piece of property that was not included in the annexation boundary. Some of the preliminary conversations that we've had with Lewis County, they'll eventually have the ability to put this, we have to file a notice of petition to annex with the county, which will trigger their BRB to review it. And if they choose to invoke jurisdiction, that can be they meet quarterly, so that could be a half year long or longer to delay the annexation of the property. In this case, we've gotten preliminary feedback that the annexation boundaries don't look irregular except for that little piece.
Okay,
And then also, the county had noted in reviewing the certification that we had submitted to them that we hadn't included the right-of-ways in the legal description. Those are, by statute, they're included in any time the city annexes both sides of the road, the road is included.
okay.
But they said just to make it clean and clear to everyone involved, that they would like to see those included in the legal description for the annexation.
So specifically, that's the little chunk of Toledo, of Lamondon, where it goes, what's that, the southeast of Toledo Vader, and then Drew's Prairie? No, the little V, is that the two roads we're talking about?
Yes, everything that would be surrounded on both sides
Okay.
by city. So really it is just the area that's,
Does that include the chunk of Toledo Vader?
it would include all the road right of ways in there. including
Wow,
Toledo Vader.
interesting, okay.
For how far from the intersection?
Only up to the areas that are proposed for annex. So
Okay.
if we're looking at the map, the annexation boundary
Thank
and the city limits. I'm coming closer, I can actually see it. So we have the annexation boundary here, over on this side of the road, we're not proposing to annex, so that would include this loop in here.
That triangle, or, okay, that,
And it would also include this piece of road here. So those are the areas that would then be included in, so basically this plus, that, it looks like Bruce Prairie Road with it. And then, this piece of Lamondon, and then Toledo Vader, for this section right in here. And the piece that we're talking about adding is this little square there. We have made an attempt to contact the property owner, but we've not been able to, apparently that's rented out currently and the property owners aren't there. But maybe during,
I do have additional information about that.
maybe during the applicant's presentation, they can talk. I think they've had contact.
Great.
with the property owners out there. The other change that's occurred is there's an area that the applicant for the annexation would like to rezone. In our zoning map and our comprehensive plan map for this area, we've designated that as residential with commercial up along the road. They'd like to add a small piece in there, and zone that commercial. That means that we have to go through a secret review process, but that it's just procedural. There's not really a big change. It's discretionary on your, what you might like to entertain those changes. The 60% hearing on an annexation is optional, but because there were changes, I thought it was wise to bring it back before council at this point. So you could choose to accept and modify those or reject them collectively or individually. And if there are any questions, Mike Johnson, city's consulting engineer, and Adam Sneed, who's also been a very big part of the annexation process. We're all here to answer questions of council should they arise. If you don't have any questions at this point, then I'll end my presentation.
So there was a little chunk, sorry, while you were over there, at the bottom of that V where Lamondon and Drew's Prairie come together, that 1 acre house, so that is in the annexation area. I wasn't sure, I thought maybe that was excluded as, yeah.
That is part of the
Okay,
annexation.
fantastic. Okay. So you're looking for questions?
I wasn't looking for any questions. If there are none, I'll sit back down again and we can maybe turn it over to the applicant for a presentation of the annexation. I know Valerie's here, as is Travis, so they both represent the applicants for the annexation.
So I'd like to just make one real quick comment, Valerie Wiskowski, who we're discussing associate. On the annexation map and the map you guys have before us, the parts that we were considering commercial on was phase 5 and phase 6, that it would extend along that out to Plumpton or through Prairie Road. Whereas I think the
Oh.
map that we just had up there was only showing the phase 6 that I have on the bigger diagram.
So there would be an additional
Both
inner,
phase 5 and phase.
Yeah.
The rectangle that I drew on
Oh,
the
okay.
top was only reflecting phase 6.
Okay,
so that,
so that, yeah, this one and that one, okay.
okay.
And you've been speaking with the Sorensen property owners, is that kind of to keep them similar in?
So there's a couple schools of thought on that, is we have that big industrial, the big shop out there, and it's kind of what, how do you? That has value, and how do you keep it, repurpose it or whatnot, and that seems to kind of go with that more commercial use. But also bringing in, with the depth of some of the Sorensen property between the highway, it gets pretty narrow where some of those commercial uses can be hard. So this gives you a little bit more flexibility with site plan and integration through the area. We're not looking at anything that would necessarily compete with downtown, but more that you could provide some services that aren't available or just specifically for the number of houses going in here.
And potentially some jobs?
And potentially jobs, yeah, I mean, we can all sell each other homes all day long, but at some point we need some income producing jobs. Help this greater community. So I'm gonna let Travis take the lead on the annexation as a whole, and I'm just a sidekick. I'll let him speak as well.
Yeah, I don't have any formal presentation, but wanted to add a couple things. So when we first came to the 10% annexation, one of the big comments, from the council was be nice if the school property could be brought in. So they were brought in. All of the property owners signed affirmative that they're support, including the school district. And that 1 acre piece by that deed is the Rocky property, they signed it as well. So the only one that didn't was that little notch, and that is owned by father and son Jenkins. The son lives in the house, father lives in Thurston County or somewhere north. We sent 2 letters, and I actually went to the house and talked to not the son that lives there, but the son's girlfriend, and so she took a copy of the paperwork and the map. But they never affirmed or denied or protested or anything. So at this point, my assumption is that they're kind of indifferent. They have a house that's already on the property. They don't seem to have any desire to divide it, but if they do get annexed, then they probably could in the future, but I don't get the sense that they're going to fight the annexation, but I can't say anything one way or the other for sure. But everything else has been pretty straightforward. We try to respond to Todd's questions along the process.
Excellent, thank you. Todd, is there things that we need to do with that to make sure? I mean, I don't think council's really ever liked the idea of forcing anybody in on the annexation. So
the options are to include them in the annexation and effectively force them to be annexed because they didn't ask. Or not. The downside of not including them is that you're likely to get the county BRB to invoke jurisdiction and then conditionally approve it based on correcting that boundary anyway. So the county boundary review board does have authority given by the state to review and accept or reject annexations proposed by the cities, and they can do that based on a limited amount of criteria, but one of those is creating an irregular boundary. So if they should choose to reject it based on the fact that we've created the boundary, or they could conditionally approve it, ask the city to correct it at a later date when we finally adopt the annexation. But it's almost certain that if we do not include that at this point, that they would invoke jurisdiction, which would delay the process by 6 months. And if that's okay, then we can wait and get through the process and see what their recommendations are. There is no guarantee that by making these changes, they won't invoke jurisdiction. There are criteria that they have to follow. They can only vote for a limited number of reasons, and we appear to be consistent with all of those except for the irregular boundary. So hope that's the long answer to the short question.
Thank you. Go ahead.
One thing I might add, and I'll ask Val to agree or disagree, the applicants, as far as Toledo, Cal, and Joma that have been paying the bills for all this process. With, at this point, rather include them if Todd thinks it's less likely to cause a 6-month delay.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure if they would have been upset about it after I knocked the door, gave the paper, it would have, City Hall's phone would have been ringing the next day. So I think that's the safe, our opinion.
And I think we agree with the applicants. It's
Yeah.
moving forward is a good thing.
Yeah, it gives you guys the opportunity to lessen that risk and then be able to collect those taxes
Yeah.
for the additional year, which I think is important.
Helps us be ready for you when you get here.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Great. So is that, we move to the
So
public
that's the
hearing?
conclusion of the applicant's presentation. You can open up the public hearing.
I have a question. What is the process then of having that person be annexed into the city when they don't want to be? Or in their indifferent and whatever, if you are not wanting, if you're that person and
So-
say you're annexed and oh my gosh, you know.
So are you asking what the impacts would be to the property owner?
Yeah,
Or are you? asking-
Exactly, that's what I'm, yes, what
Okay,
would the
so-
impacts be to
So
the
the
property?
property owner would then be subject to city taxes,
Mhm.
but they'd also be allowed to receive city services.
Yes,
So, so that would be the big change for them is whatever difference in tax rate there is between county and city.
The city's cheaper.
Did you have any? Yeah,
And
it's
the-
basically
yeah.
just an addition of city taxes to the property, but the other thing that it does is it puts them inside the city limits, and now for permitting and other services, they're dealing with the city rather than dealing with the county. So for permitting jurisdiction, that changes. It changes for law enforcement as well.
Yeah.
So it would be an odd and difficult. I did not consult the police chief on this one, but that square in itself, if it were not outside the city, then presumably their jurisdiction would be county sheriffs and not city police. So it is a little bit odd that way.
so their post office, would they then get a post office box because they're part of the city? That would change.
Well, they would-
It's only based on a distance to the post office box. Yeah.
Okay.
You get mail at home?
No, I get it in the mailbox because, we're not close enough and
Hmm,
we're halfway between
Yeah,
post office and that stuff.
yeah.
they would just see their property taxes go down,
Okay.
basically.
I'm just
Your
curious.
taxes are lower, so in that case, it would be a benefit
Mhm.
for an increase in services. And I think you charge differently for water and sewer,
If they're buying water or sewer premise, it's cheaper if you're in town as well. Yeah.
so those would be differences, or if they chose to connect. Right now, there's no water out there, but
No.
should they choose to connect when it goes by, it would be cheaper for them to receive
Yeah.
that service as residents of the city. So, I have something.
Yeah, the only thing that I have to add, is that you're potentially increasing the value of their property substantially. So long as they don't want to change the property, or sell the property, it doesn't really impact them, but because they become part of a incorporated city that has sewer and water utilities available, and smaller zoning designation, they could essentially subdivide the property and it adds value to their underlying property. So whether or not they choose to take advantage of that, that's up to them. But
Great. So that's it. We're ready.
So public hearing, if there's any public testimony.
All right, so I am pausing the city council meeting and opening up the public hearing for the Toledo annexation 60% direct petition method. Anybody like to speak? I know you want to. No?
Yeah, sure.
Steve?
A couple of things. Adam, thank you very much for bringing up the pointed fact that I was also thinking about, which is that the
You want to?
benefit to the landowner in the future case is pretty overwhelming. You know, he's in the county, he's got 1 acre, he can't do anything with it other than leave it in the house. someday there's gonna be heirs to that estate. That if they're in the city, you're gonna be able to subdivide that land, given our lot preferences. And the land becomes a whole lot more valuable than it normally would. Emily, to address your question. In this particular instance, because you have such a vast majority of the applicants voting yes. This person has little say one way or another. Whether they're going to be annexed or not. If the decision is made and the way Todd presented it. Then we could back off of that, have it go to BRB and have them tell us that they'll conditionally approve us. As long as we get that guy to agree to be annexed, so we're 6 months down the road, looking at the same situation. And that doesn't seem to make much sense.
Right, no, you're sending the paperwork back and forth basically to get the same result.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
We have a few people running for mayor in the audience. Jenny, what do you all want to talk about it? It's gonna be on your watch.
Yeah, I thought the cold stack over there in phase one. We don't have any other cul-de-sacs.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So the plan that's up on the screen now, even though it's titled Toledo Plantation, is actually for the next item on the agenda, and that would be the presentation for the development agreement. That development plan was used as a concept by the applicant to show what may happen should they become annexed. I know Valerie's gonna talk more later, maybe not specifically about that plan, but about the request for how they can see the development. So approving the 60% annexation does not approve that plan. And it doesn't, there'll be another hearing on the annexation as well. Approval of the 60% is an interim step, so it'll still have to come back following the council.
Yeah,
So if we annex these people in, are they gonna be forced to put in, hook up the sewer water?
Mike, you want that one? They're pretty far away. from
Yeah,
sewer
and
water.
right this minute, they would not be because there's not water or sewer available there. And I can't remember right off the top of my head what the current city code says relative to if it's within a certain distance you're required to. So I'd have to do some research on that if I can remember.
I mentioned, when our house burned down, then, we were already in the city by the time they burned down. And, we would have preferred to go to the city water and sewer, and at that point in time, we weren't able to. So we continued with, we put in new septic and continued with our water supply. So if I think out there, it would probably be not a mandatory thing ever, and then it would, unless it was set up as some kind of improvement district to pay for it. But I think it's very, very doubtful that they would actually hook up.
Does it-
Some of us would probably find.
yeah.
Doesn't it, I could be wrong about this, but isn't it generally when it's coming by as something new, the hookup fee is a little less than if you don't hook up as it's coming by and then everything's all settled in 5, 10 years, 3 years down the road, you decide, oh, hey, I want to hook into that. Now your hookup fee could be more, or
Only if it's in a local improvement district type.
okay,
So I mean, I think it's more, certain city codes do require connection if you're within a certain distance of a water or sewer line. And I just can't remember
What
whether
it-
yours
what it
does or
is.
not, and if so, what that distance is. So that's what I have to double check.
Well, I've heard of, actually, in the house I grew up in, we had septic and we did not have a well, but we got to a point where we couldn't get a permit to work. We couldn't do anything with the septic. If it needed anything, we were connecting. That was the only option, so.
And that can happen if you have limited space for an additional drain field, if your drain field is failing and you need an improvement or essentially a replacement, you don't have more space that's adequate on your property, then that can be a trigger that requires you to connect.
I could see the county also saying, no, we're not gonna give you a permit for a well because you can get water from the city right there, so that's. Seen that as well, okay. Anyone else? No? All right, last call. It's the end of the 60% direct petition method annexation public hearing. Back to your regularly scheduled meeting. We have a presentation. Actually have a real presentation, or did we pull that forward?
So it's, the presentation I have is basically that sheet. And we just wanted to kind of open the table based on the planning commission meeting we had about a month ago. And one of the things that come up was a discussion about an annexation development agreement. And that ship has kind of sailed based on the timelines that we're holding, but it did open the door for that discussion related to the Jolma property in particular on how we might look at a development. Oh, yes.
I just turned my microphone on. Oh, okay.
So.
Talking away from the audience.
Oh,
Yes, I will stand
come on
up.
over here to our spot.
So. To back up, about a month ago, we were up here at a planning commission meeting and talking about an annexation development agreement had come up. And that ship was kind of sailing based on the annexation timeline and the time that it takes to put an annexation developers agreement together, essentially. So on the Jolma property, we did take a step back based on where we're at in the process of looking at how that would develop out to bring forward this concept of doing a developers agreement that's tied specifically to that property. In large part due to some of the concerns we had related to how the city is going to manage the growth of the area that's being annexed in. So our goal tonight is we have this phased map here that's up on the screen, and that's kind of looking at how we could phase the site with the residential and commercial development. So looking at breaking it into smaller phases so that we don't flood the market with lots and just have things sitting there that then streets are picking up trash just over time, or now needing to be maintained, but no taxes coming in from homes on those. So breaking it up into smaller phases from the residential aspect, we do have that commercial area in phases 5 and 6 that we were looking at as well. So we wanted to just open the discussion with the city council on things that you guys would envision and seeing in a developers agreement to get an idea of what we could be looking at to provide within that agreement to help the city out. So that's where we're at with it.
Okay. Todd, I'm gonna point right at you. We've talked about development agreements and they make a ton of sense from both standpoints, from both parties. It helps protect us and it
Absolutely.
helps protect you because we kind of are a bit of a moving target right now.
Yes.
As we're learning how to grow.
Yeah.
So that,
City code does allow for development agreements.
Yeah.
And they open up the, for the applicant, they can open up the possibilities to blend the zoning within the site. As long as they have pieces that are designated as commercial or residential, within the area of the development agreement, then they can choose to apply those standards throughout. It doesn't allow the applicant to circumvent or to throw away the code. It just allows them to interpret the code as a little bit more flexible throughout their area. So it's a great tool for an applicant to use and also for the city because it becomes a discretionary approval of council. There's a lot of negotiation and that in what the city gets out of approving a development agreement and what the applicant needs to make a development successful. So it's a very well balanced, at the end, it has to be a very well balanced agreement for both city benefit and applicant benefit. And I think they're really great tools. I think Valerie is looking for maybe some identification of items that the city may be interested in. I know, for approval of Cowlitz Meadows that we've gone through, because of the large amount of growth in such a short period of time. That's going for planning commission hearing on Wednesday, and that we've conditioned them for some things that aren't typical for development just because they were going to have a huge impact on the system that wasn't prepared to deal with that. So we've had to work through that. So I think in that regard, a development agreement also could be a very good tool to look at, the level of development that's coming in and what the applicant sees and be able to consider that and come into an agreement ahead of time for how they're going to deal with impacts to schools and police and fire and all of those things, rather than wait for a development to come in and then have to look at how can we condition them. So that's.
Is that something planning commission can help us do some of the lifting on? Steve?
I think we can make recommendations.
Yeah. Cause y'all are a lot closer to it. To what's been going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other area that they can work really well on is if you're looking at updating your standards. So like in one jurisdiction, we had worked with the city on what their collector standards were to create a modified section that wasn't adopted by code and that they hadn't considered, but we brought forward to create basically a 10-foot wide pedestrian path that was elevated from the main roadway to get that separation from traffic and drop the road, the cars down a little bit lower. And we didn't have sidewalks on both sides. We just moved that to a nice wide pedestrian pathway. So there's opportunities to look at maybe what some of your street standards would be. If you're looking at updating those or doing some density transfers with critical areas and trying to phase and blend so that you have a multitude of products that you can bring in a wider sector of population and different income levels to provide more housing.
That is one of the things you brought to the planning commission meeting, and we definitely saw here's how many houses we can jam in versus this one, and I'm glad you are bringing this one forward. And we also talked about connecting the annexation and this development into Toledo a little better. So, that might be something that we figure out is because, right now we've got Toledo Vader at its skinniest and most dangerous. It is the only connection we have between, old Toledo and new Toledo.
Yeah.
And the applicant's asking about a post-annexation development agreement, so we're not talking
So
about
we're
an
not-
annexation
yeah.
agreement ahead of, or
Yeah.
development agreement ahead of annexation.
So we've got time to,
Yeah, we've got time to work it out, but we wanted to open the door and get feedback from the city on. I mean, I could throw things out there, but without knowing what you guys really want, I don't have a way to get to the meat of what's important to you.
so it sounds like we should get
Sounds like
together
we should
and
just,
get together and decide, figure out what,
it would be nice to hear, let them get together
Yeah.
and come
Yeah.
up with a proposal or what they've come up with, and then have a workshop maybe between the council and the planning commission so that we could.
I mean, I feel like we've redone our city streets and sidewalks in the last 2 years, so I don't feel like we need to redo that much at all. But I do feel like, with having someone look at it who has, like our planning commission, and who has a little bit more of a professional eye.
Then we
guide
can
us
put
through it.
together
And maybe have a workshop on this too. I think
Yes.
that's an excellent first step for us.
so I think you're hearing, we like the idea.
Perfect.
So,
Yeah,
and I know that there are some other concepts too. Adam has negotiated with an applicant in a different jurisdiction, but in that case, they were forward thinking about, well, what happens if we get all this infrastructure and streets in the ground because we've approved a development agreement and a development, but yet there's no revenue, there's no tax offset. So you want to talk a little bit about that concept too?
So the way that I would respond to Valerie's question is, I would think about the things that make you all nervous about this. You potentially have a pretty big population growth. What I'm hearing from the developer is that they've got multiple phases. They've got a relatively limited market, and they don't want to flood the market. So this may be a long relationship. It may be a decade, it may be 2 decades before this reaches full build out. What are the city's exposures? And if you ask the applicant to come in and lay down a whole bunch of asphalt and build all these streets, but then nobody's using them and they're just out there weathering, well, then it becomes the city's responsibility to maintain those streets and overlay them and chip seal them and crack seal them. But if there's no revenue stream, that then becomes a burden rather than an asset. So I would say, think about the things that make you the most nervous about growth. And then use the development agreement as an opportunity to mitigate some of that exposure.
so that Adam sums that up really well, but that's part of why we have that phasing. Is we don't want to lay down that asphalt and then wait for the market to come, because that does put a huge burden without that revenue there. So some of the things on our end that we would think about on how to address that would be that we, extend out the timelines for approvals, like that we have after each phase is platted, that we would have an additional X number of years before the next phase would have to come online and be constructed. But we would lock in the standards for under which we develop, so that we have the predictability of what's coming down the line, but you guys also have the protection of not incurring the burden of maintaining those streets indefinitely, with no revenue. So we should.
Y'all good?
Yeah, we're
We're
good.
talking about things that make us nervous and.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So if there is input, like if the applicant, it sounds like the direction that you're all assigning is that you'd like planning commission to make a recommendation. So that means that when the applicant submits, then staff will schedule planning commission to do their initial reviews, and when they're ready, they'll pass along a recommendation to you all for final consideration. But if there's any input you'd like to give planning commission, this is likely the last you'll hear about this in a discussion format before it comes back before you in a formal format as a proposed development agreement. So if there's any input you'd like to give the applicant as
Then
things that,
Then if we're gonna talk about things that make us nervous and the things we were talking about, I would like them to really take a close look at traffic, schools and policing. Like how are we gonna? You know, you could say fire and EMS, you could, I guess I have some good confidence in them. They have their EMTs here, they've just revised their paramedic. Their paramedic structure and how that looks, they're paired with Winlock. And, they have all that mutual response from, I mean, I guess I have less concern about the fire EMS portion than I do the policing, the traffic in the school. I think the fire EMS will be, I mean, will eventually, but I mean, as it's starting, I don't think it's as a big concern as the policing, because I think they could grow with it as far as.
So, one of the things- One of the things we had talked about at the last planning commission meeting was impact fees. And it sounds like the school district has adopted some impact fees that will help set off the cost or the impacts to new students coming in. And those will be collected typically at the time of building permit application or permit pickup, so that will put money into the school prior to students showing up. And as far as like the traffic goes, that's something that would have to be addressed, and we have to meet all the standards as if we didn't have a DA and with a DA that there's some additional room for what might be failing or what might be improved. Can I build a new superhighway to I-5? No, I wish I could. My pockets aren't that deep, but we could address some of those types of issues and look at what's going on with the traffic. So I think the last one that we did a preliminary traffic study so that we knew what we were dealing with on the DA side. And then when we came in for formal application, at that point, we had updated traffic numbers for what may or may not have changed since that initial traffic study, the preliminary stuff. So those, I think, can all be very easily addressed by you guys.
Are these open green areas?
So those are areas, we're in the process of getting some additional site work done to know really what our developable boundaries are. But we do anticipate that there would be some slope setback and some open space or green space areas for the areas that are the steeper slopes or critical areas like ravine, like the stream coming down this western boundary. There's a channel there that would probably have some sort of riparian setback based on classification. So kind of starts to account for some of that, and as we start to firm up where those boundaries are, so we can start laying out what our development might actually look like to include in the DA. We'll have that open space there. Okay.
is open space an important element of a potential development agreement with the county? I think that's something the planning
I
commission
think
should
that
consider.
would be important, yeah, because there's a lot of development here, and if you take it all up, then it's.
Yeah, and you'll see, you'll see like on the end of phase 8 and phase 10, and then in phase 2, we've got some little green areas. There's also one up there in phase 3. A lot of times on our, what we found works really nice, especially with these larger developments, when we're laying out lots. Rather than just making some lots bigger, we'll take our end areas and create what we call pocket parks, which might be just a green space with a dogway station and a bench. It might have like a little playground for toddlers, depending on what the side, but we try to make it a little bit of a mix for everybody throughout the development. So rather than congregating all in one spot, you have an option for multiple little areas. You can go sit and watch the sunset or have an outside phone call without kids screaming at you in the house. So we do try to work those within the development as well, along with that, what we'll have for the green space on the exterior.
You're grinding pretty hard. You got a question?
Well, I'm just trying to think of like how this relates to. No, I'm good. I'm just
Okay.
thinking. I'm good. No, I just hate cul-de-sacs. Yeah, and this is just conceptual. We dropped a cul-de-sac in there based on, we're dealing with a little bit funky on the property lines on where roads come in and where connection points are. And how do you make the use of everything without just building tons of roads that need maintenance? So we did end up with that one cul-de-sac, but as we firm up what our development boundaries are, I do expect this to change a bit.
Yeah, I just foresee, what if someone has a fire in the back of their house and, a fire truck has to go back there, turn around and, you have multiple EMTs having to get on site, that's gonna cause a major problem. So that's a very fire prone area in this, and on that field, it gets hot, intense heat. And so, well,
Well,
but that area still gets
Fire
that
vision.
heat, it still gets that wind, it still is the same area.
well, that's one of the
So-
things when you look at tree standards are deviating from something, you have the International Fire Code that when you start looking at, like, say, Clark County, for example, their curb to curb paved width in a residential area is 28 feet. And they allow parking on both sides with this idea that you have, or parking on technically, you've got this little tiny narrow area for the fire truck to get through, but people park on both sides. So it's like you're playing dodge getting in and out. You go to a wider street that's like 32 and now you can accommodate a little bit easier. So you start looking at what you might have for parking or human behavior with street parking and then what a fire truck truly needs.
Yeah.
Then you start setting your street standards from there and you can address a lot of that a bit easier.
And I think what she was saying is they are set by the fact that they only have so much property here and this street is gonna be where it's coming in. They have no really choice.
Yeah,
no choice where to
that's
put that.
lined up with the Cowlitz Meadows on what they've got for their stuff there. So, and then coming out the end of Plumpton, we were definitely trying to keep that alignment in there as well.
So street patterns within the development are something that
Yeah,
we
street,
should.
I think
probably
street
look at.
patterns on phase 1 are the only real issue for me. I
So-
think getting rid of that, if we could get rid of that cul-de-sac, that would please me greatly.
I
If there's
like,
any way, but that's just, that's my,
I like where this.
Eric and I
Yeah,
have-
but where I'm coming from is. Cowlitz Meadows came in and it was kind of nice like this, right? Where
Yeah.
it flowed and had streets. But then we said no to the 20-foot streets. And then now look what we've ended up with. We've ended up with dead ends. You don't like cul-de-sac dead ends, I think are worse. And honestly, if this cul-de-sac going away means we're gonna get the ugly grid that we
well,
have
we
at
don't know
Cowlitz
what we're
Meadows.
gonna get.
Right, so,
Don't fear the future, Eric.
no, I'm just saying, as you negotiate, you end up might get what you want, but not what you really want.
Yeah, so looking at this, just off the bat, if we were to eliminate that cul-de-sac and bring it through to a through street. We may end up with lots that have double frontage, so the backyard and the front yard are on the street. And that sometimes
It's a little
is
ghetto,
perceived negative
About
with,
that.
with kids in the backyard and.
I've got a
traffic right
double
there.
fronted street, that's okay with me, but I mean, not okay with everyone.
Everybody goes on the corner.
Streets on 2 sides.
I have no issue with cul-de-sacs.
Yeah.
See, everybody's different.
As a kid,
but
I lived in
I'm
a
just gonna,
cul-de-sac at
as
one point.
here discussing
Yeah.
things, I
Okay.
am going to
It's
speak my
good.
opinion.
It's good.
Yeah.
And I think this is really important for the applicant to hear because they know that there's a balance of opinions.
Yeah.
about
I mean,
this.
we're a 131-year-old town and we don't have a cul-de-sac in our town. So, right?
Is that good or bad?
Doing it
I
the
don't know.
same,
Is it?
just because it's always been done that way, doesn't make it right.
I'm just stating.
Or
a fact.
better.
It gains, it's a little interest. There's gonna be a family that's gonna move to Toledo strictly because they've got kids and they want the safe cul-de-sac,
Yeah,
right? So you'll pick up a family because of that potentially.
potentially.
And that's one of the things I really like about this is there's a variance, or there's a differentiation of, there's small lots and there's medium lots and there's big
Yeah, we
lots.
want to try to play a phase of density from some higher density to out towards a bluff where you have some larger lots so that you can attract the cross section of population. We don't want to just target one, but we want to create a product that there's a place for everybody.
And can you talk about phase 7? Is that dense, is that multifamily?
Yeah,
Is that what
so
you're thinking?
phases like 4 and 7, that's a little bit of the darker yellow, that's where we're looking at some of the higher density to help phase and buffer off some of the commercial area. So whether it ends up as like duplex lots or apartments or whatnot, that there would be some coordination or some envisioning of density transfer so that we go from that commercial to higher density. And then we slowly fade out to those bluff lots that would be larger there along that green space.
And we spoke about parking being key to pulling that off
Yeah,
successfully.
yes.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of overflow parking anywhere. I mean, we have more in town here than you would have up there. There's just no parking lot to go.
Well, and I think that's where watching your street standards becomes really important, that you comply with IFC to where you can have parking on both sides, because regardless, people are going to
Yeah.
park on both sides.
Yeah.
And then keeping 2 lanes of traffic open in the center. So I think that'll help, but yeah, you're right, that there would need to be some additional
Yeah,
parking.
I mean, if somebody wants to go use this park, where do they go?
Yeah,
Are these existing roads or is it?
no, this is just
Okay.
kind of what we put out. We tried to keep some of the roads a little bit curvilinear along the bluff there. And as we came through and we divided like north to south, we looked at trying to prevent anyone from having a raceway down the center. So like as you come in through phase 5, you basically come into a T intersection, you're forced to slow down. And make a decision whether you go north, which would then tie you into the Sorenson property as that develops, or south into multifamily and then into the single family product. Coming off of Palmdon Road, then we do another swing in through there to start heading to the west and soften that up and slow traffic down. So a lot of it's looking at how can we keep traffic slower, how can we keep a little bit of curvilinear street where it makes sense.
So who does the street naming?
That is somewhat up to the jurisdiction. We've had some places where they let us name it, and then the cities a lot of times will have their own naming conventions.
Naming convention. Yes. It'll be a party.
So this one here would be Jamie Street.
Absolutely.
So how,
Have to
I
vote.
can see how many lots you're gonna do, you're having in this real estate business for about 40 years, like, I've seen it happen in one lot. Which is something I don't think we really want to take. in.
No, we don't want to go there either.
Well, I don't like that.
Yeah.
How do you intend to mitigate all this traffic down from Monument? Because I can guarantee a lot of them will be heading north from Monument.
Yeah,
And
so,
from Monument, we already have a speeding problem there. We have a daycare center. That anybody that's lived there long enough to know that that's the Fox, what they call the Fox view, the school uses it. A lot of people
yeah,
use that walkway. And it's just a matter of time before we have calamity.
so. Part of it unfortunately does come down to enforcement, which, I mean, you have the poor lonely man here. So hopefully we get him a whole posse.
But his jurisdiction's been in.
Yeah, so even on that end, then it becomes, how do you get the county to respond as far as the improvements that we're able to do, we'll be doing street widening along our frontages and things of that nature, that over time, you're hoping that everybody starts developing and creating those sidewalks, that there does become traffic calming devices. But ultimately, and unfortunately, yeah.
That's not down from Mountain.
no, and unfortunately down Clemondon Road, that is an enforcement issue and it is with the county. And the best way to address that I have seen historically is to go down to the county and really put a lot of political pressure on them that we need street calming devices.
Well, theoretically, I mean, if you run the numbers, you can anticipate what 300 cars a day down from one.
The traffic study, what they do, the traffic engineers, and I'm not one of them, but they'll look at the amount of connections that we have to the existing public road system. They'll look at where infrastructure is and they start looking at how traffic patterns work in the area. And that yields traffic numbers or trips that they expect down each street at each given time. And then the impacts are then need to be mitigated for or offset within, the impacts created by the development. So if there's already a speeding problem, that isn't unfortunately something that can be regulated by code, that's an enforcement action. But if there's something that is a safety issue, like say an intersection is failing, then they can under SEPA, they can invoke and say, hey, these improvements need to be made, whether it's a turn lane or we have another issue here that needs to be addressed due to failure of the traffic patterns.
Right, well, there's two extra points on the state highway compared, in the east and west town, one is blank, no one wants to use that, even by yourself. The other one is directly across from one, they're often there going up by the
Yeah.
So, I mean, speaking for the residents of Vermont, I mean, they're gonna be impacted, the value will be impacted, I know that.
Yeah, so the traffic study will take a look at all of that. Unfortunately, I don't have an answer.
Stuff there, there's a couple of them doing that bill in that road, is that you guys, or is that?
No, I wonder if it wasn't maybe Toledo Tel. So.
We had somebody doing a traffic study for us.
Okay.
here
It
in
wasn't a
town.
traffic
Okay.
study, wasn't traffic count, it was not a survey with net, you said,
Okay, I wonder, I'm not sure who that was. It wasn't us, but yeah. So like Toledo Tel, Cowles Meadows, they'll all be doing frontage improvements and dedicating additional right of way. So I would imagine it could have been one of them that was out there surveying to get exactly what's there. So when they build their infrastructure, that they can tie into that.
I think it might have been a survey for the water main's gonna extend from.
Okay, that's right.
state's water reservoirs all the way down to Mondon, to this area.
so it's gonna pick up on the north end, Vermont.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's probably the
So, no
surveyors.
one would be, everybody up there is going, well, they're not gonna be required to hook up, and that's
Correct.
No.
funny thing though, if it's if they sell the property on FHA loan, they will require them to come and pick it up. If it's readily available, they are.
But they're not in the city limits. So they're not-
That doesn't matter. Water sewer is available, then they won't make a loan on the property. And,
There won't be any sewer across there
well,
in the near future, but water there will be.
Yeah.
So part of the question about street mitigation can be addressed by asking for input from Lewis County as we go through the DA process. If you'd like, we can reach out and get input from them about impacts to their roads and their policing abilities and bring back that information with planning commission's recommendation on the DA.
And that left turn
Goes
is a,
back to that traffic
you know,
concern.
So that, because a lot of these roads do connect through Lewis County, so we engage the county.
be interesting if you could find a way to encourage exit 60.
Yeah, exit 60 is only 2 miles down and you can get north or south versus if you go down Clemondon, then you've got Clemondon and then 3 miles.
And if turning left out of there is a problem now, then it's gonna be more a problem when there's growth, so that'll have to get figured out.
well, even in the summer, people having, Lake Mayfield from the lawn, if they pull them on. and-
They do, yeah.
I mean, that's the problem.
It's a
So,
steady
anybody
stream.
that's in Pacific, they can never head north, they're not gonna go south, down to the country house and turn around and go north.
Yeah. They are, even if it saves them time.
What is it?
My dad's maybe used to drag race something.
And ride horses.
And ride horses, listen here.
Back in
Okay,
my day.
so this was a presentation item for discussion, and I think we had some just good discussion.
Yeah.
Valerie, did you get what you wanted to from
Yeah.
council?
The only other thing I would add on traffic is. We'll probably end up getting WashDOT input as well, just because of state highways classifications. So, and they like roundabouts.
Yay,
So,
roundabouts.
I don't know how you guys-
They're actually talking about something at Plymouth and 505.
Yeah, so with WashDOT, a lot of times you end up with roundabouts. I don't know how you, it sounds like you guys are.
I'd rather have traffic.
I was just behind somebody that came to a complete stop at it, so, you know.
Actually, so they could be really good, but I've also actually saw a rollover. At a four-way stop, somebody managed to close their eyes and gun it and had a rollover, and I was like, that's a first. I would have expected at the traffic circle that they just put in a block down, but it was a four-way stop that they did that, so go
I
figure.
saw a log truck do perfectly at a roundabout, so I was like, it can be done.
Yeah, no, designed right, they could be really, and you look down in Ridgefield area, they've done a great job, Liz, yeah, the center and the riders.
Yeah.
Ones in Woodland, no.
It was on Highway 12, so I was like,
Yeah.
all right, these guys.
This curve.
Yeah, it works as a traffic calming and it addresses like distance and.
You don't live in Place City, but.
No.
If you do, you know that we had a hell of a lot of fall during certain times of year.
Oh, yeah.
And I can see that intersection more than anybody. And I can tell you that it's a death trap.
It is, yeah.
Yeah,
Because
Steep
what you have,
on
you
the
get
sides.
people coming off I-5, you know, bombing into town, and there's limited sight distance, east and west.
Mhm.
And with the fall and boy, they're running before you can imagine. If you're heading westbound, then you have the sun right in your eyes, and you can't see it coming on.
And the state does have a lot of property right there at that intersection.
I'm sorry.
The state has a lot of property right at that intersection as well, so.
yeah, and you'll see like in our plan as well, we looked at cross circulation. So that in the future you can start to, we've got two connections there to the north and one potential that could be extended. Across the ravine on the west end, just to provide additional outlets that you don't overstress a couple intersections. So in the short term, sometimes you see those, a couple intersections get a little bit stressed, but that's accounted for in the traffic studies and the mitigation. And then over time, as those connections are extended, you start to relieve those a bit more.
Okay,
So that's all I had.
thank you for your time.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Mayor, just as a point of order, I did need I don't know if you're gonna do it later on the agenda for the action item, for the new business, but I did need a motion on the annexation, so. A motion to approve and accept with the recommended changes, so that, I'm not sure if that's. A lot of times councils will separate the deliberation and then have an action item later on the agenda, so if that's your intent, but I just didn't want to miss an opportunity to get that through tonight while we're here.
I'd ask my clerk, is this unfinished business? It seems like, I mean, we got a spot to put it there.
Part of the public hearing.
Part of the public hearing that we're gonna,
It could either be there or it could be a second. In Kalama, they do it, we have the public hearing, we close the public hearing just as you have, we move on. And then it's an action item under either the unfinished business or new business, so they adopt.
okay, let's add it to unfinished business. We can talk about something else for a little while. People can maybe think about what they're thinking. Okay. Thank you for all of that. On to new business, special event application Toledo Thursday Market. So y'all are moving back outside.
I make a motion that we approve the special event permit application for the Toledo Thursday Market.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion?
So. Sometime kind of new.
Yeah.
They have it inside of that hall.
Mhm.
For the year.
For the winter.
And so then when they move outside, they have to have special events, but they don't have to have it when they're inside.
Right, because they're in the private building.
Yes. Okay. And do you or do you not now? I mean, I seem to think that at some point, the street that runs through behind maybe block that off. Or so that the traffic, I think I've seen it blocked off, did it not blocked off?
Well, it has been, it's talking down.
Between the boat, yeah, between the boat launch and
previously granted agreement between the political parties to pass a law and or laws to address the vacancy. The city of Toledo can pass with approval from legal counsel its own ordinance. I put in there that there's a rough first draft to be reviewed by legal. They prepared it, and then for the council will start talking about it. Again, so just streamline the whole thing. In State versus Blake, the Washington State Supreme Court found former RCW 6950-4013, which made it a strict liability offense to possess a controlled substance in violation of the Uniform Controlled Substance Act, unconstitutional. Because the statute did not require proof that the offendant, the bad guy or girl, normally possessed a controlled substance. Without proof of knowledge, the court held the statute violated constitutional due process. The Supreme Court's ruling has the effect of eliminating any criminal penalties for the possession of a controlled substance without a prescription. And those are your hard drugs. That's heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine, fentanyl. This has nothing to do with marijuana. This is something completely different. So what they did is they added an adoption in 2021, which provided a temporary correction to the law to make it unlawful a person to knowingly possess a controlled substance. However, that is going to, like I said, sunset, and unless they fix it, then it's going to be open season in all the cities, in all the counties throughout the state of Washington. So I recommend, again, that the city council adopt this ordinance that was prepared by the legal counsel, with the idea that if it does not get fixed, then you have something to fall back on. We have something to deter the bad guys. And if we do get to that point, then I would also suggest that the mayor and council issue some kind of a public announcement. In the worst case scenario is that they don't fix it. Well, then you guys issue an announcement that we have passed something that's in place. Don't come to Toledo and do these things. It's not going to be welcome. You'll be held accountable. So that's it.
And so our legal counsel has recommended that we wait and see what happens on that, and that there will most likely be some modifications to the draft that's in your packet that you all can see as well. It's online. Just be prepared for a future council meeting before it expires.
Or special meeting.
Or special meeting.
To pass it, have it in place.
Yeah.
Yes. I know I'm not the only one that wants to ask this, but how could you charge somebody if you didn't have proof anyway? I'm not understanding the overturning of that law.
You don't know that I slipped it in. They don't know that I didn't slip it in your purse while you weren't looking.
That's what the defendant claimed. They claimed that the pants that they borrowed from their friend had the drugs in them. They didn't know they're in them.
Okay.
The drugs were in there.
These pants that happen to fit me perfectly. Oh, they're not mine.
And that big bag of meth that's in my
Great.
pocket isn't mine either.
We're an hour and a half in, so thank you very much.
So, any questions?
And since he's just asked the public questions, I just realized I blew right past the public comment on agenda items, if that's what people were back there chatting about. Did we have anybody that signed up before we move on?
Tim.
Public comment on the agenda items?
Anybody else on the agenda?
Oh, then you got a spot at the end. Great. You got a spot at the end. All right, so that's new business. Moving on to unfinished business is the 60% annexation. I will entertain a motion.
The staff report includes the possible actions over in the column. If you'd like, I can read them. Although any variation of those is also.
That's nice. You're delivering it like we got to see at the planning meetings, the county planning meetings.
I make a motion that we accept the 60% annexation with the little chunk included.
So specifically the little chunk and not the road right of ways and not the rezone, or all of those?
All of the above.
Thank you. I thought that's maybe what you intended, and that's what I was going. I wouldn't normally question your motion.
Well, I wanted that little chunk included because why wait 6 months and go through the whole rigmarole? Just do it.
Yeah. And a second?
I'll second that.
And do we want to discuss You have more to discuss? No,
Now it's just with all the amendments. So,
I agree with moving forward with the little chunk, definitely. And the right of ways and such and so forth, and the result. Okay, then, all in favor? Aye. And opposed? Motion passes. Fantastic. Other business, summer help for public works. Is this something that you added to the?
This is something that I added to our agenda tonight because I wanted to talk about it. We had summer help. Was it last year? I believe it was, or was it the year? One of these years.
We've got it every year.
We've had it every year. Anyway, I want to get summer help back. I want to look at the budget, try to figure that out. I know that we are due for another look at the budget. And so, it is difficult with all of this new growth coming in, for Mike to do what he needs to do and also look ahead. And so I would like to get a third person in here as well. So that is what I would like to talk about.
okay, so this is just a question. And I know we're in a different place, but it seems like to me, we used up a lot of summer help putting in meters last year, right?
And
we
then
used
some.
part of our
That was
summer
a
help.
that was a separate thing, but I did use some of the part of that
Okay,
Yeah.
I thought that was the case when you.
and to take care of the city.
It was part of, we did use some of that for people when you were doing meters. At that time, that was a little bit of what summer help did.
A little bit, yeah.
And we pulled the summer part-time off of the budget when
Right,
we were trying to make it not be red in color.
right.
So
But with the grass leaping out of the
but
ground.
with the promise that we wanted to readdress it, and so thank you for bringing that back up.
Yeah.
Um,
So
I don't know that we need a motion on something, but I think that, or
just, I think we're all in agreement that maybe we could,
we should direct the treasurer to help us find funds to make sure that we can get somebody back.
Well, and maybe we could get a plan from Mike on what he anticipates he needs.
maybe a job
Just
list
keep
or
helping
something.
it up.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, with the projects that I just did with the entry road,
Mhm.
working at the park,
Yeah.
all this stuff, putting the screw press in, all that's taking.
So you're saying you have a list a mile long for him?
Well, that's what I'd
I'll
like,
probably come up with
Or her.
something.
All right.
that's what I'd like to see is have
Then,
you
okay.
present. Okay, we've got these things and I'm gonna need this many hours.
And we had a number on there, so I think I'd have to refresh my memory as to what that was. Is that hold
Yeah,
true
I
as
have
to,
to-
and does that hold true as, was it like, I don't remember where it was, so.
I can't remember either how it's. Yeah, kind of went through the budget meetings and.
Okay.
So whatever you put, whatever you submitted within your budget, that's. We could look at that amount of hours and know that
That was probably-
that would, okay,
I'll find that and reach out to you on that.
thank you.
Thank you.
And so I don't think we have action to take on that just yet, but
But we'll get on it.
Thank you.
Mhm.
excellent. So Ash Street repair.
Oh, good. Cause that was my next.
That's
question.
Oh, yeah, this is a.
Well,
call.
like I said, it's pretty horrible. The alley hook to that street is failing horrible. Anybody that drove down through there knows. So we gotta repair the blacktop first. That's a 2,000 square foot patch. 2 bids are in. I'm waiting for the third one. There's quite a difference in between bids.
I noticed
Why?
that. I don't know. I have an idea. One is a 30-year-old company and one looks like he's just starting out.
Well, and the other thing I'm a little concerned about is, Mesa did not have a statement on paying prevailing wages. And
It's
that,
not a prevailing wage job. We, no grants, no anything like that. We're just paying for it. So
And it's under
it
the,
doesn't have to be prevailing wage,
for the city,
right?
yeah, it's under the It's under the $75,000 threshold.
Okay.
And Mesa's done work for us before. right?
They've done, yeah, a lot of work.
A lot.
So.
Yeah. Under the North
And they've
Fork,
been around for a
it
while.
says here, it says on number 4, it says include overhead costs for paying prevailing wages. For public.
That
works.
was more for,
Yeah,
John.
and then up here, Meza, it's like half the cost. Anyway, I snooped on Facebook and
Is it going towards the dead end? And then this is the alley that runs behind the store? So
Right.
it's on this piece going
Yes,
towards the dead end,
I need to
somewhere
fix it.
right, I would assume, towards the side of the store.
well, it's actually right at the end where the alley crosses.
Got it, okay,
Right, yeah, and I need to reconstruct the alley before I can do that. I need
Got
that fixed so I can match that.
so there's a ton of traffic going in and out of there, there's homes back there, there's an apartment building back there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It needs to be
it's-
paved.
It's needed done for a long time.
Yeah.
Do we know where on the budget that there's a spot with this money?
For what?
Do we know on the budget where there's a line item? for this?
See, you
Yeah,
need to
streets,
revisit the
streets, they have plenty of money.
That tells you
Streets has
what-
plenty of money?
Yep.
And you're still waiting for bids though, is that yes or no?
Well, 3 bids, the other bid that's coming in, they're not gonna be here, and they can even do the work until November, October, November, so, and it's gonna be high also.
And you wanna do this when it's hot too.
Well-
Like ask.
When
the
it's
Lord,
dry.
I'd like to do it pretty soon.
Yeah.
We have pass-through money from the county that we're gonna use to do it, so,
Great.
yeah.
So you
that
just
makes
need
me
us to
happy.
approve of it,
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
you just need us
Yes.
to approve one of these bids,
Yeah,
So I'm looking for.
Yeah, if we could get that
Okay.
approved, I can get on the schedule.
then I would make a motion.
yeah.
Well,
Be amazing, I mean,
well, one is double the amount of the other.
I'm sorry, I knew what the
Make his
recommendation was, yes,
recommendation.
yeah.
yeah.
Even if he has a recommendation, if one is double the other, I would recommend the one that is the lower bid, which is Mesa.
Make
So
that
I'll make a motion that we accept the bid from Mesa out asphalt products to repair Ash Street.
Thank you.
I will
Welcome.
second that recommendation.
Further conversation?
I mean, that for the vote. I know for the vote, oh my gosh. Oh, just second it.
Second the motion,
Oh
yes.
my gosh.
We good for a vote?
Yeah, we about done.
Okay, all in favor? Aye,
Aye.
and opposed? Great. So on other business, we have a Thursday, we were gonna meet on Thursday. I have an opportunity here to confirm that Thursday to discuss
I thought it was Wednesday.
Winlock Court Services with the lawyer.
I thought it was. Wednesday.
Wednesday's planning commission meeting.
Okay.
Yeah. And we would have Buzzard there. To help, because this is kind of what, we put this off a while ago because we had 2 contracts in front of us and no
What time? I
explanation.
just thought it was Wednesday, it's fine.
What time?
Did Buzzard give us a time?
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock? That work for y'all?
Here?
Yeah,
On Thursday. we thought.
on Thursday. I'm not hearing any complaints. And then our last other business is lot sizes for duplexes. What happened was we failed to specify that duplexes had a different lot size. And so planning commission was thinking it was 4,000 square feet in Old Town, 6,000 it's 6,000 square feet in new construction for a single dwelling and half again for a duplex. So the question is, do we want to pursue that? I'm not sure how you would put a duplex on 4,000 square feet. That'd be pretty impressive with setbacks.
It's pretty narrow at that. I mean, 4,000 square feet's not a lot of room. You're talking tiny homes at that point for a duplex, but
Because there's a cost that's associated with this. It'll need to go through SEPA and we'll need to pay somebody to get it through SEPA, and most likely that's gonna be Todd.
if you choose to pick it up and schedule it as an agenda item, the next step would be for us to put it on your regularly scheduled agenda as an action item, but before that, we need to process SEPA on it as well.
Well, I think if you're talking to us about it, I think we should go to 6,000 feet.
It's only because it was on the it was called out. It was actually planning commission.
Yeah. I
Did,
mean,
did something, a recommendation on it.
who doesn't want a little extra yard up there?
So we're talking a couple $1,000s to get through SEPA.
That's okay.
That's it.
We'll probably make it back in the end.
Okay, then
Is that a statute we need to pass?
I think that
It'll be a change to your zoning and land use code. That's what planning commission was recommending. But before you can take final action on that, it has to go through the state environmental review because it impacts the densities of lot sizes within your city. So it has an overall environmental impact. There's not really an environmental impacts. You're downsizing the minimum lots required. But you've got to go through the procedural element before you can consider and take action on adopting that specific code.
So how do we initiate getting it started by SEPA?
Just the motion to set it as an agenda item will do that. And then I'll determine what agenda item, which one of your agendas is possible with SEPA, and we'll bring it back as an agenda item.
is there more work that needs to be done by planning commission before we see this?
That's up to you all. This kind of came as a concluding item on one of my first meetings with planning commission, so I don't know what background happened before it. I think. I don't know how much work.
It was me. I missed it.
The recommendation is pretty clear to change the lot sizes for duplex from 4,000 to 6,000. If there are other changes that you'd like planning commission to consider, you could remand it back to them, and then we can pick it up as an order of business probably in July or August, and we could bring it back to planning commission. They could have more discussions about lot sizes generally or whatever you're interested in, but.
How much?
Did we get the duplexes in new construction out in outlying area from 6 to 9, right? Because we made that recommendation. We made a recommendation on 6,000 square foot lots. We made the recommendation for 4,000 square foot lots. I am not sure we ever made the downtown recommendation to go from 4 to 6.
His picture was actually
It was
taken
busted.
out and damaged up. And so, it was that was like I said, it was done in October of last year. It's taken us out, and we've been able to get in touch with family members. He came in and, made contact. So hopefully we'll be able to get some wheels underneath this. Okay, that's all I
Thank
have.
you.
Thank you guys again, I appreciate it.
Any other discussion? From the audience? No? Okay.
I make a motion that we.
I have, are we covered by insurance for them?
Over the city with probably broad general insurance, I'm imagining that we would be.
Yeah, we actually, I brought it up last year. Or last time about it, that it was vested and it was just. And just, today when the gentleman contacted me, I was. I don't know, he just said that he is offering a reward to catch those kids. Because I guess supposedly it was on video, but they couldn't see their faces. But the problem is being not seeing their faces, we're out there enough that maybe we have seen those kids. We don't need to see their faces, it could be what they're wearing that day or something, that we're just not connecting. He would like to find those kids. So that parents know the actions that were happening. And he says, even if it makes sense that those kids have to come and work in the park with us for every weekend. And realize what they have done, not just let it go away.
So if you're watching this on YouTube and you know something about it, reach out. Yeah, we're on YouTube.
What's the amount of the reward? He didn't say.
Yes, he did.
He did, he had made the statement of $1,000.
So the video is on YouTube?
No.
Or?
This is, I was making that call out, anybody's.
Yeah.
Send me his name and number.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay, great.
I will. I will get it. I got it.
I'll contact him Friday.
Anyone else? Okay,
No, I could bring.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
I say.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great.
Thank you for coming.
All right.
Another one.
Hey, what? We get